Another day will take place in the Traitors' castle with 17 players still alive. Last night, the players were split, with there being 2 separate sides formed. With Christephanie being the target for Sasha's side, the Traitors almost lost another ally. However, Christephanie pulled through just barely, winning over 5 other faithful to vote Zack out of the game. With Zack being a faithful and another faithful getting murdered, we're down to 13 faithful, but still so much time left to get rid of all the remaining traitors. Who will be murdered between Krael, Sasha, Darla, and Danielle? We'll soon find out. Inside the breakfast room, Crystal arrives first and takes her seat in style. In confessional, Crystal feels pretty good in the game so far. The faithful are doing a somewhat good job thus far, voting out one traitor. At the moment, she feels like she can trust Cassandra and Darren the most. Her and Cassandra are good friends, so she doubts she'd ever double-cross her. On the other hand, the main people she cannot trust are Pablo, James, and Danielle. Pablo still isn't off the hook for her because he randomly decided not to go against Haley, despite hearing her shuffle around day 1 when the traitors were being picked. The fact that everyone seemed to have forgotten that is wild to her. Then with James, he never has his own opinions. He always goes with someone else's idea. Plus, Sasha called him out before and his reaction seemed more nervous than confident when he said he is faithful. Finally, Danielle is another suspect because she seems like a slimy snake that is capable of flying under the radar. There's something off about her, but she needs more information before she fully accuses her. In the room, Christephanie comes in next and sits down next to Crystal. Crystal asks Christephanie if she's doing alright after last night, and Christephanie says she barely got any sleep. Last night was super stressful and she felt mentally exhausted. Crystal tells her she thinks she's faithful and that Pablo and James are traitors. She's leaning more towards Pablo because nobody is looking at him anymore as a suspect, which means no sense to her. Christephanie says it's possible that Pablo is a traitor, but she didn't consider it anymore once Pablo came up with his theory of why Kira was murdered. Jonathan then enters the breakfast room next, followed by Alessandro, Danielle, Penelope, and then James. In confessional, James feels like he has to commit to his traitors team and avoid betrayal at all costs. He showed his cards through yesterday's vote, voting out Zack instead of Christephanie. It may have come as a surprise to some people, so he just has to back his decision no matter what. In the room, James says that he feels bamboozled because he was confident Zack was a traitor. Danielle tells him that you can never feel confident about who it is, unless that person accidentally leaks they are one. Penelope then asks Danielle if she actually still thinks Christephanie is a traitor, and Danielle silently nods to Penelope, with James seeing the nod. In confessional, Danielle is pretty sure Christephanie is a traitor. She can't really protect her anymore because the faithful will question her. She just has to be honest and tell people that she thinks Christephanie is a traitor. The last vote shows her that perhaps her other 1 or 2 traitors voted with her, assuming 3 traitors remain. Back in the room, Darren enters next, followed by Yasu, and then Amira, who shows off her shield to everyone. Crystal says well deserved to her, and she thanks her. In confessional, Amira says that she's feeling good on day 5. People seem to trust her, and she feels like her moment to shine is coming. She's waiting for the numbers to dwindle just a tiny bit more before she becomes much more active in the game. Based on the information she has gathered so far, Christephanie seems to be a massive suspect for people, and she agrees with that as well. James is another person she can easily tell is a traitor. In fact, she's most confident in him being one. Her third and final suspect right now is Jonathan. There has to be at least one sweet person in the traitor's turret, and Jonathan fits that description. He's also a reality star, and people are beginning to assume there are 2 to 3 reality star traitors. Jonathan is doing a great job blending in with the crowd. Nobody is considering him for banishment, and perhaps even murder, unless of course, he's the one doing the murder. Back in the room, Alessandro says that it seems all 3 volunteers for the shield yesterday are here, so unless everyone walks in here and the traitors attacked Amira, it should be clear that the traitors went the safe route and murdered a person who voted last night. Yasu says he hopes it wasn't Sasha murdered since she's one of the smarter people here. The room's door then opens, and in comes Emma, followed by Pablo, Olivia, and then Cassandra. Cassandra sits down and stares down Christephanie, trying to figure out if she's acting strange or not. Christephanie looks back at her, but doesn't say anything to her. In confessional, Cassandra says that it's becoming super apparent to her that Chris is a traitor. There's no way she's not, especially after last night's vote. However, she's not going to entertain her name in case she protects her back by protecting her from murder every round. It's possible that she has been pushing the traitors to keep her and Darren alive, which she appreciates if true. Therefore, she'll have to try getting the banishment target on someone else suspicious, and Nita could be an easy choice right now. Back in the room, Yasu begins to feel nervous, staring down the door, waiting for Sasha to come in. In confessional, Yasu says that he has a great friendship with Sasha. The 2 of them are really good teammates in this game, so being without her would feel awful. It's very possible she was murdered if the traitors are trying to strip away any duos in the game, kind of like what happened to Darla and Kira. In the room, Nita comes in, and Danielle points out that it's down to Darla, Sasha, and Krael. Penelope says that Krael better walk through that door. Pablo thinks Darla was murdered, simply because she was supposed to be framed, but it did not work in the slightest. Darren agrees with Pablo's thought and says the traitors have every reason to murder Sasha as well. She has been the most vocal so far at these roundtables. Yasu then says he can totally see Sasha being the one murdered, and it kills him now. Amira and Darren try to comfort him as he begins to feel sad. Soon after, Darla walks into the room, and Nita screams that it's between Sasha and Krael. Darla then sits down, a bit scared for Sasha since she has been a very active player. Yasu puts his head down, refusing to look at anyone. In Nita's confessional, she says that sometimes, you need to strip away the opposition's numbers, and so the traitors murdered someone very important to the opposing side. Someone who may never be banished, who will likely never sway from voting out the reality stars. Back in the room, everyone hears footsteps by the door, and they all watch as Sasha comes in. A bunch of people scream in joy that she's alive, and Yasu covers his face, starting to tear up. Sasha realizes she was the last one and then sees Yasu crying, so she goes over to hug him. She tells him she's okay, and Yasu tells her he thought he lost her. Sasha then sits down in her seat, wondering why Krael was murdered of all people. Darla says it's possible he was just seen as a strong faithful. Emma says that he indeed was and did not deserve to go so soon. In a flashback, Krael enters the confessional room, finding out he was the one murdered. He deeply sighs, sad to have gone so soon. He didn't even get to tell anyone his big secret, being part of the Season 1 production team. It sucks that he cannot continue on, but he had a blast, especially being able to play with some awesome legends. Back in the breakfast room, Penelope tells everyone that she recalls Krael accusing Olivia as a traitor, and now he's dead. Everyone looks at Olivia, but she claims she never heard Krael accuse her. She only accused him from her knowledge. Yasu backs up Penelope, saying that Krael indeed accused Olivia. He did it in a room with some people post-banishment. Olivia then asks who all those people were, and he lists himself, Sasha, Penelope, and Emma. Olivia then says she's starting to think someone from that group may have been a mole traitor, leaking that information to their team and then murdering Krael to frame her. That's all she can think of since Krael is a very random kill. In confessional, Olivia says that there are people in here who are underestimating her. They don't know who they are messing with when they attempt to accuse her. She has ammo locked and loaded, so if anyone tries her, she'll fight back. Penelope then says that the information was important to put out there, but she's not saying Olivia is a traitor. Olivia then kindly asks her not to make it sound like she distrusts her. Penelope ignores Olivia's sass and proceeds to drink her wine. With the players allowed to go around the castle, Emma, Penelope, Alessandro, and Danielle are together by the bar, discussing the next target. Emma says she's fully locked and loaded to get Nita out tonight. She doesn't care what other people think. Penelope says the same, saying that it'll be easy for her to be called the best faithful in history if she keeps voting for traitors, regardless if they stay or not. Danielle says that Nita would be a likely traitor, but so would Christephanie. It's basically a toss-up tonight for who goes between those two. Emma says she prefers Nita because she can't handle the pressure of being accused every round. Alessandro tells Emma that she is human after all, so she's likely struggling because she doesn't want to go home, whether she's faithful or not. Emma doesn't get why he's against voting Nita out, but Alessandro clarifies he's not against it. He's just unsure why they are accusing Nita if it's over a natural human reaction. He has always thought of Nita as a traitor, but not over how she handles pressure. Emma calls Alessandro a smartass and decides to make herself a drink. In confessional, Alessandro says that Emma is a lot to handle. That's why nobody is taking her seriously in this game. In another confessional with Danielle, she too calls Emma a load of work. She never listens and tends to be ignorant. Scratch that, she's always ignorant. Outside, Yasu, Sasha, Cassandra, and Darren chat as they solidify a 4-person truce. In confessional, Darren says that him and Cassandra decided to make a truce with Sasha and Yasu, meaning they'd never flip on each other in the game. They all have similar suspects and they trust that they are faithfuls. This truce could lead them further into the game and hopefully allows them to take control of the banishments going forward. Sasha then tells the group that they need to make sure Christephanie goes home tonight, but Cassandra is starting to feel like Nita might be the safer choice first. Both ladies are likely traitors, but they need to satisfy Emma and Penelope before they go on to Chris. Yasu thinks it doesn't matter whether Emma is on board or not, but Cassandra says that her and Penelope are key numbers for the faithful, so it's important not to lose them. In confessional with Sasha, she reveals that she definitely trusts Cassandra and Darren more and more as time goes on. They are also good shields ahead of herself and Yasu, so if there ever comes a time where one of them have to go, it'll likely be Cassandra and Darren first. Not only that, but they also think the same. It's just hard to agree on who should go first between Nita and Christephanie. Meanwhile, Crystal, Christephanie, and Darla chat, and Darla firstly apologizes to Christephanie for voting her last night. Christephanie says it's a game, so she respects her decision. Darla says that she no longer believes she's a traitor and is more convinced it's Nita or James. Crystal then adds Pablo as a suspect because nobody has been bringing him up for whatever reason, even though he straight up protected a traitor after accusing them. She's talking about Haley. In confessional, Crystal says that she wants to banish either James or Pablo tonight. She needs to lower the newbie numbers at the moment, so she'll need to keep Christephanie and Nita just a bit longer. Since she trusts Darla as a faithful, it'll be nice if she could join in on voting Pablo or James out tonight. Darla then tells Crystal that she'll consider Pablo again since she brings up a good point about him never coming up for a while. Crystal says that people see him as a king for guessing Kira's murder, but it's really not that serious. In another room, Olivia chats with James, Amira, Jonathan, and Pablo, stating that she's growing suspicious of the group of people who spoke with Crael. To her, the traitors tried framing her by killing him, who apparently also accused her before nightfall. Amira doesn't know though because she trusts Sasha and Yasu, and then Emma and Penelope don't seem like traitors either. Jonathan says that he'd rather think those 4 are faithful than traitors since they've done a lot of work in the game that doesn't seem too suspicious. Olivia says that regardless, she doesn't like how Penelope tried to make it seem like she murdered Crael. A bit later, Danielle talks with Alessandro, asking him if he thinks they should target Nita tonight. Alessandro tells her that he assumes Nita is a traitor since she's not defending herself as much as other faithful used to and have been. It just seems like she's not putting a lot of effort and is instead relying on the reality stars saving her. In confessional, Alessandro says that he's willing to commit to taking out Nita tonight. He already called her out before, so there's no reason for him not to target her again. If he successfully takes her down and she's a traitor, his only worry is he'll be murdered right afterwards, but he's willing to take that risk. Danielle then tells Alessandro that she'll support this plan all the way through. It's time for Nita to go. It's now time for the faithful crown ceremony to occur, so everyone is in the courtyard, awaiting for their next instructions. Everyone then finds out that nobody will be volunteering for the shield today. Instead, everyone will secretly vote as per usual for someone they'd like to see get the shield. Anyone can be voted for. The top 2 players with votes will receive a shield in secret. If there's a tie, nobody gets the shield as per usual. However, if the top 2 tie and nobody else does, they still get the shields. In confessional, Yasu says that this twist still works out for him and Sasha because they are seen as 2 of the most faithful players in the game. He gets to keep his vote and still be in the running for the shield, which is perfect for him. In another confessional, James isn't too thrilled with this twist because 2 shields means higher odds of the traitors failing a murder. Going into the next murder, they will have to gun for someone who likely wouldn't win the shield. Everyone is then asked to secretly vote, so they all proceed and finish. The results are locked in, but nobody except the shield winners know who they are. In confessional, Danielle confirms that she got a shield, which surprises her. She didn't know people trusted her, so perhaps she came second in the vote. She voted for Yasu since he is one of the more trustworthy players at the moment, so she assumes he got the second shield. In Yasu's confessional, he confirms he won the shield, meaning he's safe at tonight's murder. He hopes Sasha got the other shield so they can both live another day. Even if not, she's probably not getting attacked if the traitors fear the possibility of her having a shield. Going into tonight, it's imperative that Christephanie goes home so that he can take out a traitor while also holding on to safety. With the faithful crown ceremony done, the players must now head to the banishment room so they can get into the roundtable discussion, and then the banishment of course. Everyone is now seated in the room, and just to note, there will be 17 votes tonight since everyone will be allowed to vote. With that, the discussion begins, and everyone sits in silence for a moment. Emma clears her throat as she stares down Nita, but she doesn't say anything, and neither does Nita. Alessandro then goes on to begin the discussion, asking Nita why she didn't want to start off, considering she's been on the chopping block for days now. Nita looks at Alessandro and says that she doesn't have a reason to defend herself anymore if she already has the past few days. Everything she will say is the same stuff she said before. Penelope then says that it's not working because people are still looking at her as a traitor. Nita says that it's not her problem that everyone is looking into the wrong direction. She doesn't appreciate what certain individuals are doing to her every day, finding ways to mess with her head. These are personal attacks she is talking about. Emma then shouts, claiming that nobody is making personal attacks towards her, but Nita said that she and Penelope have been nothing but rude to her. She heard the hag comments about her. Sasha then jumps in to tell Emma and Penelope that it's really just a bad look on their part for bashing Nita. It's actually swaying people away from voting Nita out. Emma then asks Sasha who she would like to vote tonight then, and Sasha says Christephanie's name. She received 7 votes last night, and she'd like to think Chris had a huge backing from her traitor team. Christephanie then tells Sasha that she's looking in the wrong direction. She accused Zach last night because of concrete evidence pinned against him. Most people who voted Zach even admitted that the evidence was the reason for them voting him. Sasha continues to say that it's a bit fishy, so she's not letting her off the hook yet. Danielle then speaks up about how she doesn't trust Nita because she's starting to vote with the crowd and not give any of her own thoughts. It's also apparent that her emotions are way different than on Big Brother. Nita then reminds Danielle that they are on a completely different show, and this show is much harder for her than Big Brother. Amira then speaks up to say that they shouldn't compare shows because it really doesn't matter how people performed on other shows compared to this one. They need to think about the gameplay that has gone down this season. For that reason, she's looking at James as a possible traitor because he's never giving anything to anyone, yet he randomly sided with most of the reality stars last night. He was seemingly anti-reality stars on day one, but that suddenly changed. Not to mention, one newbie traitor is down. Cassandra says that this is definitely not a coincidence, but James says that he's not purposely siding with reality stars. Last night, he thought the evidence was stacked against Zach, more so than Chris. Nothing more or less. Sasha then points out that she had a weird feeling about James a few rounds back, and that weird feeling is coming back now. His voting pattern is just too strange for her. Day 2, he volunteered for the shield, something a traitor would try to do right away to prove their innocence. Then, he could have easily betrayed Haley since she was suspected since day 1. Then, the Zach vote being the most suspicious. James apologizes for hunting down a traitor and asks Sasha what he was supposed to do that round when they voted Haley. Sasha says she's not wronging him for voting Haley out. It's just she wants to make it clear that he can't be innocent for voting out a traitor who was already called out day 1. James says that nobody is considering him 100% faithful for that. Cassandra then speaks up because she wants to hear more from Darla, Olivia, and Jonathan tonight. Jonathan quickly says that he's down to vote Nita tonight because he suspected her from before. Darla says that she actually had chats about Pablo being a traitor. Pablo squints in reaction, surprised his name is coming up. Olivia adds that she too believes Pablo is a traitor because it's weird how nobody accused him for a few rounds, despite him protecting Haley so suddenly on day 1. Pablo explains that he switched his mind so quickly that day because he wanted more information in the game. He had a sit-down with Haley, and she seemed super convincing that she was faithful. She basically played him. Darla asks him if he really was played by Haley of all people. She's finding that hard to believe. Pablo shrugs and says that he doesn't know how else to say it. He was simply played by her. Nita then adds that he never wanted to change his mind about her. He wasn't open to voting for her, which strikes her as odd. Pablo says that he really thought Darla was a traitor that banishment. It was simply because she jumped onto the anti-Haley train way too suddenly. It's easy for a traitor to jump with the herd, and that's exactly what Darla did. So Darla then asks Pablo if he thinks she's a traitor then, and he says he still has her name in the back of his mind. She then looks ahead of her, refusing to look at him anymore. Emma then asks if anyone wants to bring up another name then, since now would be a great time to do so. Crystal then says that her main 2 suspects right now are James and Pablo, so Darla and Olivia aren't alone in suspecting Pablo. Pablo sighs and says that he's going to vote for Nita tonight. Nita says she'll vote him back in that case. She was going to anyway. Olivia then stares at Nita, and so does Christephanie. The discussion is now over, meaning the players must now vote to banish someone. Whoever gets the most votes will be banished. In confessional, Pablo is amazed that people are pushing for his name tonight. He's definitely voting Nita because not only will that save himself from being banished, but she has been a top suspect for way too long now. It's about time they put her game to rest. The votes are all in, so it's time for them to be revealed one at a time. James is asked to begin, so he flips his slate showing Nita's name. It's apparent to him that her head isn't really in the game anymore, or at least not as much as before. It's possible she's an exhausted traitor, so he may as well be sure of it by voting her out. Pablo goes next, and he shows his vote for Nita as well. He doesn't respect people who use little things against someone, and Nita has been doing that to him lately. We're now at 2 votes for Nita. Sasha is up next, and she flips her slate, showing Christephanie's name. She says that she's not off the hook, and Christephanie laughs in response, telling her it's all good. Amira goes next and she shows her vote for James. She's pretty confident James is a traitor based on the points Sasha brought up against him not too long ago. He deserves at least one vote, even if he's not going home tonight. That's 2 votes Nita, 1 for Christephanie, and 1 for James. Penelope is next, and she says she happily voted Nita. She's been her number 1 suspect for majority of the game now, so it's time for her to go once and for all. Yasu is next, and he says he voted for Christephanie tonight. Last banishment showed him a lot. It showed him that a lot of people backed her and took Zach out, and it seems just way too convenient considering she has been fairly quiet for a few rounds. That's now 3 for Nita, 2 Christephanie, and 1 for James. Darla is up next, and she reveals her vote for Pablo. She says that she doesn't understand why he doesn't trust her after everything he said about her after Kira's death. He basically went from trusting her to distrusting her with not much backing why that's the case. Nita is next and also shows her vote for Pablo. He's been all over the place this season, so this vote is purely because he doesn't have a consistent game, something that would happen to a traitor. That's now 3 votes for Nita, 2 votes Christephanie, 2 votes Pablo, and 1 vote James. Danielle is up next, and she reveals her vote for Nita. She smiles and says she would love to buy her some coffee outside of the game if she's wrong. Christephanie is next, and she also shows her vote for Nita. She just feels like someone close to her has to be a traitor, so she's sorry for blindsiding her with this vote, but she has to play the game of hunting traitors. Cassandra goes next, also showing her vote for Nita, claiming that she has been on her tail for a while now. Darren goes next, also showing his vote for Nita. There's just way too much stacked against her at this point, so he sees no reason not to vote for her. We are now at 7 votes for Nita, 2 votes Christephanie, 2 votes Pablo, and 1 vote James. We only have 5 votes left. Alessandro goes next, showing his vote for Nita. The evidence against her speaks for itself. Crystal is next, and she shows her vote for James. It's nothing personal. She just doesn't see how he's faithful anymore. Olivia goes next, showing her vote for Pablo. Her reasoning is basically the same as Nita. His game just feels super inconsistent and random. Emma is next, and she flips her slate revealing Nita's name on it. Jonathan is up last, and he also voted for Nita. He apologizes, but he came here to play his role as a faithful. So that's the end of the vote. Nita received 10 votes, Pablo received 3, James and Christephanie received 2 votes each. However, Nita is then asked to remain seated, because this banishment vote is not over yet. Everyone is confused and stunned to hear this. They are all then told that there is actually a twist to tonight's vote. Tonight's vote is being tampered by the traitors. That's because last night, the traitors had to select 5 players that will have their votes count at tonight's banishment. That means whoever they selected, those people's votes will be the only ones that count. Everyone is in complete shock, and Nita pretends to be shocked as well. She then says that this might just be a miracle if this saves her. Emma then looks at Jonathan and says that this better not save Nita. However, in Nita's confessional, she smiles and tells the people who voted for her to try again. They can't defeat her that easily. Back in the room, everyone is now curious which 5 votes will count. It's now time to find that out. The first vote that will count tonight is Pablo's. Pablo voted for Nita tonight, so that's currently 1 vote Nita. The next vote that will count is Penelope's. She voted Nita as well, so Nita now has 2 votes. If she gets 1 more vote, she will be banished. The next vote that will count tonight is Darla's. She voted for Pablo, so that's 2 for Nita, and 1 for Pablo. The 4th vote that is counting tonight is Nita's. She voted for Pablo, so we're now tied at 2 votes Nita, and 2 votes Pablo. 1 vote left. The room has an eerie silence, and Pablo begins to feel sick. Emma then whispers to herself that there's no way Nita is staying. Everyone waits for the last vote, and it's then said that Olivia was the final vote counted, which means Pablo now has 3 votes against Nita's 2, and as a result, he has been banished tonight. Everyone is in utter shock, unable to believe that Pablo ended up going over Nita. Penelope shakes her head, still processing what just happened. Nita covers her face as she breathes in and out uncontrollably. Pablo remains seated, disgusted by this outcome. He then gets up and slowly makes his way to the front. In confessional, James calls this move the most brilliant move in Traitors history. Last night, the Traitors had received a note with the word twist as the label. They found out that they had to select 5 people whose votes will be the only ones that would count for this banishment. Therefore, they came up with a plan to save all 4 traitors tonight. They decided Pablo would be their banishment target because they can easily sway Darla to vote for him. That means the other 2 they pick wouldn't matter, so they picked Penelope and Pablo himself to throw everyone off the scent. Nobody could have seen this coming, and now Nita won't be heading home. At least not yet. Back in the room, Pablo stands at the front, admitting that the traitors played everyone tonight. He's starting to see what's going on and he feels like he has figured out their plans. He hopes the remaining faithful can figure out what he figured out, because the carrot is being dangled in front of their noses at this point. They just need to look into the votes cast tonight. Pablo then reveals he was faithful all along, and then he heads out without another word. Everyone is disappointed, and Emma says that Darla, Nita, and Olivia must be traitors. Olivia says that she was played hard, and now she doesn't know who to trust anymore. Nita says that her vote for Pablo was pretty obvious since yesterday, so clearly the traitors wanted to pick people who would vote for Faithful. Penelope and Pablo obviously wanted to vote for her, and the traitors felt comfortable selecting them. Amira then speaks up and says that it's interesting how Penelope and Pablo were chosen, considering Nita would be in more danger in that case. Nita promises she had nothing to do with this twist. She's a faithful and always has been, and this should be enough proof that she's not the mastermind. In confessional, Darren calls this twist wild. The traitors single-handedly sniped Pablo out of the game and saved Nita, whether that was on purpose or accidental. This twist changes everything now because people will focus on every little detail of it. Why did they pick the 5 they picked? What was the goal of this twist for them? Did they want Pablo out all along? Or did they just care for picking people who would 100% vote other faithful at the banishment? If that last possibility is the case, that means Nita might actually be faithful, and they've been looking into the wrong direction. The other possibility is that Nita set all of this up and manipulated Olivia and Darla into voting Pablo with her. Back in the room, Yasu says that he strongly thinks this had to have been done by someone very smart. Christephanie strikes him as guilty in that case. Christephanie says she doesn't know how to defend herself with this because she's still wrapping her head around what just happened. In confessional, Christephanie says that the plan all along was to have herself and James vote Nita, while Olivia and Nita vote Pablo. They knew all along that only Olivia and Nita will have their votes count from the Traitors team. They banked on Darla's vote, and thank God it worked successfully. Unfortunately, this now means Nita might be on people's good side, while she herself is in more danger. With there being some time before bedtime, the players head out of the banishment room and roam around the castle. By the bar, Emma, Penelope, and Jonathan chat about the latest events. Emma is baffled by what just happened. She can't believe Nita saved herself. In confessional, Emma says she's certain Nita did all of this. She was 100% going home tonight, and everyone knew since yesterday. Because of that, She, Darla, and Olivia picked themselves for their votes to count. It's so obvious those three are traitors now. Back in the room, Jonathan says that either all three of the Pablo voters are traitors, or they are being framed. Penelope says that the odds of them being framed are way too low. There's no way this is coincidental, considering that the traitors would then have to know for sure who would vote for who. But nobody knew what Olivia, Darla, or Nita would do at the vote. Olivia never says a name, and Darla usually votes with the crowd. In Penelope's confessional, she says that this twist just confirmed even further that Nita is a traitor. She was spared because of a twist which is frustrating now because they just had her on a silver platter. It's possible she'll just murder her or Emma tonight just to spite them before she goes home tomorrow. Nita, Darla, Olivia, Christephanie, Danielle, Cassandra, and Darren all chat as they wrap their heads around this latest twist. Danielle finds it wild that the traitors got Pablo out. She cannot believe this is real. Nita says that she was fully prepared to go laugh in their faces for voting wrong, but now she has to go through hell for another day. Darren then tells Nita that his opinion of her has changed. He initially thought she was a traitor, but this twist is now telling him otherwise. Nita breathes out and says that she would love for her story to make a 180-degree turn for unintentional reasons on the traitor's behalf. In confessional, Cassandra says that this twist is making Christephanie look so much more guilty. She was one of the likely banishments tonight, so she probably had to find a way to save herself by picking the 5 people whose votes were somewhat obvious, or at least votes that wouldn't go her way. The only thing that doesn't make sense is why she wouldn't pick more reality stars for the twist. She instead risked having 3 newbies vote. Christephanie then tells the group that this twist might change up who gets suspected. She surely feels a certain way about everything that went down. She now regrets thinking it was Nita. Olivia says that she's mainly shocked Pablo was a faithful. It was like a double smack in the face. First the twist, and then Pablo coming out as faithful. As the moon rises, the players must head to bed, so they say their goodbyes to each other. Penelope tells Amira that if either of them get murdered tonight, they need to make sure Nita goes home tomorrow. Amira says okay, but in her confessional, Amira says that she's going to target James again. He's more and more guilty as the days go by, and today, he didn't seem super reactive to this twist, unlike everyone else. That's just another point against him, and it will keep stacking the more he survives in this game. The 4 traitors are now in the turret, and they take their hoodies off. All 4 are astounded that their plan worked. James applauds them for such a great performance today. Nita breathes out, admitting she got nervous when it came to Darla's vote. Christephanie says that they had no choice but to take that chance with Darla, and now it paid off. Olivia says that they are still in some hot water, so they need continue being cautious. James then says that he doesn't like how he got 2 votes tonight. Christephanie says the same. Literally 3 of the 4 traitors received votes, while Pablo was the only faithful who received votes, 2 of those votes coming from their team. Nita says that it's possible they can turn things around thanks to that twist. People might not think it's them anymore. Christephanie shrugs and says that she still doesn't feel super safe. People still want to believe it's her. Olivia then asks if anyone won a shield today from this group, but nobody speaks up. James thinks Yasu and Sasha won shields. He himself voted Yasu to at least get 1 shield out of the way. Nita then says that their best murder would be someone who isn't likely to get a shield. They have to keep in mind that 2 people have a shield right now, so they need to look at the people who are somewhat trusted within the faithful faction, yet people who nobody would likely vote for in the shield vote. Christephanie then brings up Penelope and Emma, both being good options for this murder. Neither won the shield surely, and they will likely continue gunning for Nita, and now Olivia. Olivia then says that she's actually considering Crystal because it would throw people off their scent. That'll be another reality star murdered after some time and nobody will see it coming. Not to mention, Crystal is super competitive and could become a problem if she survives for too long. Stephanie then adds 2 more possible murder options, those being Darren and Cassandra. Both are a duo, and both have been targeting their own traitor team. They are both very smart, but Cassandra is slightly smarter than Darren in the game. She has essentially clocked her and Nita, so that's a scary threat for their team right now. James then adds 1 more name, that being Alessandro's. He's in a similar spot as Crystal. He's a reality star, but he's also after Nita, so at least that'll be 1 less person against her. Nita says that she would feel more comfortable without Alessandro here, and Stephanie says the same, though for more personal reasons. The 4 traitors struggle to come up with a murder victim, but they eventually all agree on 1 name. They write it on a scroll and send it out in front. In confessional, Nita says she's ready to hopefully start fresh starting tomorrow. This twist definitely benefited her the most, but she can't come off like it did to her teammates because that would piss them off. She's here to play, and she's especially here to win, so she'll be selfish whenever she can. Her game isn't over yet. She has a lot more in her tank.